Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and no, you didn't click on the wrong video. I'm going to be showing you today how to create the easiest display wedding cake. I find nowadays that a lot of people are wanting to have a fake wedding cake instead and serve cupcakes or something else that's just a little bit easier to serve. It's a great way to get that over-the-top wedding cake without having to deal with so much cake, and it's also a way cheaper option, and it's even cheaper if you make it yourself. Now, you don't even have to be super into cakes to make this because you really need minimal tools for this as well. What you're going to need is you're going to need a cake dummy or a styrofoam cake base. You're also going to need a cake board, a rolling pin, and you're going to need a fondant smoother. And I say this is for everybody because if you mess up, there's always ways to fix it along the way. The hardest part about this whole tutorial is actually covering the cake tiers in fondant. So what you want to do is you want to roll out your fondant nice and thin, but not too thin. And then you're going to use water or shortening to adhere it to the tier itself. Now make sure that you hot glue the fake tier to the actual board so that nothing shifts around. And if you are going to be traveling with this, I highly recommend using hot glue in the middle of the tiers. Now I'm going to slow that down just a little bit. Now I will admit that this is footage from a different cake that I decorated, and this is actually a real cake underneath, but it's the same principle, and actually covering a fake cake is way easier than covering a real one. But notice what I do is I kind of flatten out the edges and then I put everything to the side with my hand. I'm really not using any other special tools whatsoever. Now if you're finding that you're having a hard time getting that fondant to stick to the edge, don't worry, just add a little bit more water or shortening underneath. Now when you're rolling out the fondant, to prevent any sticking whatsoever, you are going to want to use cornstarch. One of the issues that you might run into if you have never really made a cake before is you're going to notice that you might get a little bit of bunching at the end of the fondant, but don't worry about that because we're going to cover it up. Then what you want to do is you want to cut off the fondant. You can do this with a butter knife too. Now let's get back to the actual cake that I was working on. You'll notice that it isn't nearly as perfect as that cake that I showed you before, and the reason being is because whenever you take a fake cake apart, it is going to withstand some damage. There's a little bit of holes here and there, so it's not going to be as perfect, but there's always ways to make it look more perfect. Now I am using a clothing steamer to just adhere all of the tiers together because when fondant is wet, it is very sticky. But if you don't have that, don't worry, you can just use a hot glue gun between each tier. Now what I'm doing is I'm using some Bling Wrap, and I just got this Bling Wrap from the dollar store. I love it because it's super cheap and you can cut it down to size. Now you might be wondering how I'm adhering all of this. I am steaming it because like I said, fondant is very sticky, but you can also hot glue this directly onto the fondant. Now I'm placing my flowers on, and what's great about this is that if you want to use this cake for multiple occasions, maybe you're sharing it with a friend or something and they're going to transform it to look more like their own wedding cake style, then you can go ahead and just place those flowers on site. Inedible toppers are your best friend, so use whatever you see fit. Now you can also add that little something extra to your cake board. You can add some bling or ribbon, whatever you want. And keep in mind, again, this stuff is very easily replaceable. So after the wedding, you can rip this off and you can replace it with something else. This cake probably took me less than an hour to put together from start to finish, from taking the whole cake apart and then re-putting it back together. Now, I would say to make this cake, including the tools and including everything from start to finish, the project is probably going to run you somewhere around $100 or so. But let's get into the pricing of how a bakery would price this cake. So if this were a custom cake, even if it was fake, maybe with a real top tier, I would charge $600 for the cake. But you can also rent out your fake cakes as well, and you can easily change up those colors for an additional fee. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!